Hello, good morning. Welcome to the seventh episode of the Wellness Education module. And where we're at here in this photo is like we used to practice down in northern Patagonia in Chile. And this is at a big harbor in the town of Valdivia, where we lived and set up the first chiropractic practice down in that country that was not underneath a medical license. And so this is a picture of um, Naomi in training little Victor, and this is his sister Emma. This is 1999, early 1999, and that was quite an adventure, kind of an all-in adventure. We sold everything that we had of value and moved down there, and that was the real lesson. I mean, there was a lot of lessons, of course, but it was like an entire lifetime in the few months that we were there. But in the generosity of others, for sure, and just meeting fantastic people, really learning how incredibly powerful the clinical work that we're doing is, the differences that we saw in people's lives, and also how incredible of a country we live in here in the United States. I believe that I feel like we're very fortunate, and I didn't have that perspective before I went and lived in another country where things they're very different. And so anyway, if we're going to be sharing some of what we believe to be extraordinary, then I'm going to generally talk about that a little bit. And so that was quite an experience. Last time I was talking, we had been discussing this different ways of making decisions in your life. And I'm just basically breaking it up on the two ends of the spectrum, is the way that I would look at it, of like your educated intelligence or your body's wisdom, like your inner knowing, and then some of the direction, like the directionality that these different ways of living, like we're culturally created to come from our educated intelligence, more, very close to 100% of the time. And there's not a lot of weight culturally given to listening to your body's wisdom and taking that seriously. But I'll continue to contend that if you develop the skill sets to turn up the volume of your inner dialogue and increase the clarity of your inner dialogue, and it will heavily influence the decisions that you make, the actions that you take. And so where you go, the directionality starts to change for your life. And I would make the statement that it's a little bit more chaotic, and you don't really control like the exact directionality of things. And so there are some challenges that come with body wisdom, and it has to do with trusting it. And the body wisdom can kind of get into like a battle with your educated intelligence, the part of you that knows that it knows, versus the part of you that thinks it knows. There ends up in this conflict. And culturally, we're so supported in the educated intelligence side of things that people's default is exclusively to educated intelligence in general. And I just want that to be balanced more. I had a great experience yesterday. Two young families showed up here just on our day off, and we had it pre-scheduled. They didn't just drop by, but we got to spend quite a bit of time together, and it was really great to just get to connect with other people that are like authentically on their personal healing journey, and then just to be able to contribute. These are just acquaintances. I think I had met a couple. I had met two of the people, just once or twice, and the other person I had just had a phone call with about a year or so ago. But it's so great to like bump into people that are like authentically, pursuing the road less traveled. Like they're on the road less traveled, and they're pursuing like the extraordinary life. And as I always say, it's like what's extraordinary for them is going to be different than what's extraordinary for me. But just to meet other people that are authentically on the journey, it just absolutely fires me up. And so I just feel um, so grateful that other people value our perspective on life. And anyway, it's wonderful, wonderful to contribute. And we got into that conversation between healing and curing, and vaccination and immunization. And these people are on track with learning and growing. And we really got into exactly the conversation between educated intelligence and body wisdom. And one of them is like, has every excuse in the book to stay the same. And he also knows that he's ready to transform and kind of move things forward. And I really recognize that struggle that people have. It's so culturally supported to just make the educated thing and the justification to keep things the same, especially if you're comfortable and things are really good. Like, why rock the boat? Why would you upend everything and just invite a bunch of chaos into your life? And but I would say that if you're comfortable, that's dangerous, and that shaking things up is a very, very healthy thing to do. And so um, this time we're kind of covering the educated intelligence domain, the body wisdom domain, recognizing that there's a bit of a continuum between the two. And all I'm arguing for is that there's more of like a dynamic harmony between these two aspects. You don't want to try to annihilate one or the other, but just invite more body wisdom, be more congruent with it. And it leads in specific directions. And this is where we're in this like investigation of the extraordinary life, maybe the magical life, understanding what the ordinary life is. And the tendency for a person culturally, we're taught to go and acquire all of the haves. Go and get yourself educated, get yourself a diploma, get yourself a car, move out, get yourself an apartment, maybe buy yourself a house when you can afford it, get yourself a career, get yourself a wife, and whatever the haves are. And if you're not in pursuit of acquiring greater education or material, superficial things, then you're generally considered culturally to be slacking and not really, moving forward in the most appropriate way. And so culture teaches people when they're young to go and acquire and to have. This is a consumer-driven culture. And and so people delay, you know, doing the things that they want to do, because if you are, you know, if you just want to paint and you spend a lot of time painting, drawing, but it's really not leading anywhere, but you really love it, that's not really supported. But if you're in pursuit of a high degree or something like that, then those around you, give you the attaboys and, good job. And it's all this socially acceptable behavior. And so what happens is that we go and acquire things. We are and we delay doing what we want to do. But once you've acquired all of your stuff, once you've, got the house and the whatever, you've made yourself a comfortable living, then you're basically allowed to go and do what you want to do. And the tendency is that a person has spent so much time acquiring and getting the having stuff happening, they don't really know what they even want to do. So they just do what's socially normal, whatever it just happens to be. And so, but that's when society gives permission for people to do what it is that they want to do, is after they've gone out and, acquired all of the stuff. And so if you acquire the stuff, then you're allowed to do what it is that you have been wanting to do. A lot of times people's bodies are so much of a mess that they can't even do the stuff that they always like really wanted to do, that they dreamed of. But, and they're in their 50s or 60 years old and they can't do what they wanted to do, and they feel like they've missed out. And, that's such a tragedy. That is the ordinary life, and so once you have the stuff, then you're allowed to do things, and then you can finally be the person that you've wanted to be. It's a have, do, be kind of formula for the ordinary life, and the educated intelligence drives this through rationalization, overthinking things, making the right decision all the time, controlling all of the variables. And so that's a bit of a warning. And I would say that in the domain of body wisdom, you're really getting to know yourself first. This is why we've, as part of our homeschooling projects, we've had the kids out on like really long hiking trails, whether it's the Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail, or they're doing the Continental Divide Trail this year. Is like if you are out in nature for extended periods of time, you get to know yourself, and that well of being inside of you bubbles forward, and so you know yourself deeply, and there and like I keep alluding to, is like there's a lot of technologies that help you get to know yourself really well, get really connected with yourself, and be clear internally, and know the being that you are. And then, as an extension of knowing the being that you are, then you'll have the tendency to act in alignment with the being that you are. And so if you know who you are and you're acting from that place, it's like you are being that person. And if you act in alignment, then you are doing the things that you would really love to do. Yeah. And I hope that gets clear. And then what happens is that as time goes on, you end up having the stuff, you still end up having the stuff. It would just be different. It's just different stuff. It seems, I don't understand it, but I think in a real spiritual, coming from a real spiritual space, that which is knows more about what you really want than you do. And just acting in alignment from, getting, knowing yourself, acting in alignment, that it delivers you to the haves also. It's just a different way of going about it. And so this is one of the, these are, you know, some of the ideas about, claiming your extraordinary life. And, anybody can start if they're not already on the inner journey of knowing themselves better and being in alignment with themselves better. It's never too late to start, but not starting is dangerous. And you should probably take it seriously, right? But that's a good, little bit of a story about how to embrace your extraordinary life, and you could see how it would be different. They're two very different um, paths, and as always, I'm going to be arguing kind of for both, but just to have the body wisdom more in the foreground than the culture would have one think. And so that was what it was that I wanted to say today. So thank you to anybody that happens to be out there, and we will see you tomorrow at 9:30 for episode 8.